we currently get around 80% of the beverage containers that are sold in the market come back as to be recycled. And the reason they come back is because people can redeem the deposit on those containers at the container collection depot. So there is an incentive in the system to get people to do the right thing. So what was happening here, very similar to Cyprus, we moved from a beverage system which was based on refillable containers to one which was on throwaway containers. So we moved from glass bottles, which could be easily washed and refilled by the brewers and by the soft drink companies, and they would pay to get them back. We moved from that system to one-trip solution, and that was firstly in steel cans, and then aluminium cans came along, and then of course we now have PET, high-density polyethylene, and all manners of other plastics in between in the current market. When that first transition happened, litter was a big issue. There was material everywhere. You know, it didn't matter where you went, you would find cans left on the ground or bottles left on the ground after a main event, whether it be a cricket match or a football match. There would be stuff at the back of hotels where they didn't know what to do with it, so they just chucked it out and it just kept growing bigger and bigger and bigger. There was a strong environmental movement at the time which kind of moved from the end of the Vietnam War into environmental issues with students. And although I wasn't one of them, at that time they protested on the steps of Parliament House. They put all these cans on the steps. And the politicians at the time decided that they probably needed to do something about it. And the fact that we'd just moved from a system which paid for containers to one which made them essentially waste meant that they were interested in trying to find a solution to that problem. And around the same time, Oregon had just introduced container deposit legislation over there in the USA. And so they took the Oregon example, if you like, and they applied it here. And they sat around and worked out how they could get it to work in the South Australian environment.
Numbers of countries. Denmark has has a deposit refund system to encourage refillable bottles, and that largely stands in place of producer responsibility in Denmark. So it is, if you like, a form of producer responsibility, but in a rather more prescriptive way. It tells you how to do it, rather than just giving you targets to meet. So, you know, there are different ways of doing it, and you need a system that is going to work in your location. But often voluntary schemes need to be backed up by at least the threat of, you know, if you don't do it, then we're going to force you to do it. So you might as well do something that voluntarily, that is going to be easier for you than to wait for us to impose something that's going to cost you more.
It started out as just 5 cents per container, and now it's 10 cents a container. It started out in 1977 at 5 cents, and in 2009, we changed it to 10 cents. So there's a long period of time there where the price of the beverage went up, but the deposit remained the same, and we still had good engagement. But there is a time when people would say, oh, the 5 cents is no longer worth it, or I have to accumulate far more containers to make it worth my while to take them to a depot and redeem the deposit. So in 2009, we increased it to 10 cents. And yes, there was a little dip beforehand, and then it went up again. The return rate went up. And it went up because people thought it was worth their while. And it's 10 cents. So what would I don't know, 750 ml Coke in a delicatessen here out of a small store would cost you around $3. So 10 cents out of $3. So, you know, how much is it as a percentage? It's a very small percentage, but it has to be large enough to drive people to make the effort to cash in the containers. And very often, in our case, it's kids, children will collect them for pocket money. Churches and other NGOs will do drives on beverage container collection to get money donated as part of their, raising money. So they collect the 5 cents or 10 cents now on those containers. So it can become quite lucrative, particularly for small not-for-profit organisations, church groups, youth organisations, those sorts of people. Scouts here, for example. I don't know if they have scouts, or you have scouts in northern Cyprus. The Scouts Association here owns 9 depots, and they take in roughly around I think it's around $10 million a year through those depots. That's an extraordinary amount of money that's now available to that not-for-profit organisation to work with kids. So it comes highly recommended. Cyprus should go back to having a deposit system and start to reap the benefits from that. It also educates people about the environment and recycling and litter, those 3 issues.